Hi, I'm Igor. I'm a data scientist living in London, and welcome to another episode of this time series crash course. In this video, I want to discuss moving average models. These models appear a lot, particularly when you're building an ARIMA model, and so definitely well worth knowing if you're a forecasting data scientist. In this video, we'll cover what are moving average models, what are the requirements for them, how do we fit them, and how we can do this all in Python. So let's get into it. On your screen now is the notebook that we're going to work through, as it tells all the ins and outs behind a moving average model. So in my previous video, which I highly recommend you check out, we discussed the idea of autoregression, and this is where we forecast future values using some linear weighted combination of previously observed values. Now for moving an average model, instead of forecasting the previous observations, we're going to forecast using the past forecast errors instead. It's kind of a weird thing to visualize, but essentially we're just trying to see what would be the errors and compensate for the errors going forward to the original value. Again, if you want to be there's no point diving into the weeds too much because it's quite mathematical, it's quite a complicated concept, but that as long as you have the intuition behind it, then don't worry too much about how this effect really comes about. The main thing I also want to discuss is that this is not to be confused with a rolling mean. So the mean average model sounds quite similar to a rolling mean. We're not rolling the average value forward in time. We're simply saying what is the difference between the previous forecast errors and fitting those. Again, a crucial thing to understand, because in most of statistics, the mean moving average would probably mean the rolling mean, but that's not the case for forecasting models. So what is the moving average model? So we can discuss what it is, but it's better shown mathematically. So what we have here is essentially a very similar concept we've seen in the autoregression model, in that we have the mean value, or the constant, plus some statistical noise, normally distributed. And then we have these theta 1, theta 2, theta q, and these are our coefficients that we want to fit values with. And in this case, what we have in these et minus 1, et minus 2, et minus q, these are the error terms of the previously fitted forecast. So what we're trying to do is find where our model's going the most wrong and find the coefficients that compensate for that error the most, and so we can forecast it to the future, right? I hope that makes sense. Again, think of it as we have the mean here, and then we have the errors that we normally get. And basically what these coefficients we're trying to estimate are trying to do is that they're trying to compensate for the error we have in each lag and add those to the mean or subtract them from the mean. So it's kind of they're trying to get as little perturbations, I like to call them, correct. And that's kind of the point of moving average model, is trying to estimate those errors and compensate for those errors using these coefficients. Again, I hope that makes sense. It's actually quite a hard concept when you really think about it. It's quite a weird, not weird model, but it doesn't really appear much in other cases. And so in this case, we're kind of trying to estimate the errors, which is quite an interesting approach, but it works really well. So one key requirement of a moving average model, I forgot to mention here, Q is the number of lags or number of errors we include. Similarly, in the previous autoregression video, we said how many lags we include. Same way here, we instead of using P, we use Q, just to separate the notation out. Now, the main requirement of the moving average model, similar to the autoregression model, is that our data needs to be stationary. This means, again, done a whole video on this, it means that our data has constant variance and constant mean through time, and so it means it has its statistical properties are constant as well. And you can achieve this by using the difference transform and also the logarithm or Box-Cox transform to stabilize the variance, different things for the mean. Again, I've gone over this in a previous video, so I'll link this somewhere on the screen now. So make sure you check that out. I'm not going to spend too much time going over it because, like I said, I've already covered it before, and it's quite a fundamental topic, so I really recommend, if you don't know much about it, to check out that video and then carry on with this one. Right. The next thing I want to talk about is the order selection. So this is how many values of Q we use. The way this is normally done is through this autocorrelation function. So if you remember, I did a video on this before as well, which will link some on the screen. But autocorrelation is where we see how well our time series correlates with itself at different lags, and where it correlates the most is kind of the features we want to include. Like if it correlates really well with the previous lag, then we definitely want to include the previous lag as a feature. And we do this all the way to see which lags are the most kind of impactful or correlated with the current value of the time series. And we plot that as a graph. Again, we'll do the tutorial later. and we can see which ones are the most important or statistically significant. Is a better way of doing it. And by finding the best values, we can then find the best number of orders, so best number of Q to add to our moving average model. Again, we'll go over this tutorial later, so don't worry too much about it. This seems a bit arbitrary at the moment. The other way of doing this is through the kind of like the brute force approach, where you just iterate over different values of Q and see which one gives you the best score on some sort of validation or test set. So this is kind of preferred method because it's quite robust, because, well, you know, you're trying out every single value and seeing which is the best one, because each model's different and each data's different. This is kind of the preferred way, but again, it depends on your computational cost or like your compute time and how quickly you need the model. So up to the person, but I kind of prefer the latter. The next part is kind of the hardest one, and that's the estimation. So unlike autoregression, the way you fit these coefficients, theta above here, is not that intuitive. It's actually quite complicated. And I've only shown how you fit the first one because as we fit more and more orders, it gets even more complicated and maths becomes quite, not difficult, just a bit tedious to write out. So how do we actually fit the coefficients? Like I said, it's not as straightforward, but the general gist, as I've written here, is that the autocorrelation values for each lag are directly related to the coefficients, right? So when we get the autocorrelation, which is between 0 and 1, or sorry, -1 and 1, depending if you take the absolute values of the coefficients, and then we can use some sort of formula, so because they're directly proportional, to calculate the coefficients for these lags, so theta 1. So if we know the autocorrelation or forecast error, you work backwards to acquire its coefficient. For example, as I've written here, for the MA1 models, in other words, for the first lag, or theta 1, what it will be is that if we get the autocorrelation C1, so this is the autocorrelation of the first lag of the current time series, we get this formula. And as you can see, we can rearrange this for theta 1, and it's basically a quadratic equation, and then we can solve the simple quadratic equation for the coefficient. And basically we extend this idea for MAQ, so all the different lags. The point is, it gets really complicated for the lags, and this is just a simple way of doing it, but in most cases the package does this for us. We don't have to worry too much about it, but it is important to have this initial intuition, and this is how it's done. Again, don't worry too much about it. The main thing is you should remember is that the way the lags or the coefficients for the moving average lags are calculated is by using the autocorrelation of those lags, and there's a sort of formula between those, and that's how it's done in packages. Again, don't spend too much time worrying about it. Feel free to look up in your own time if you want to know more, but I honestly don't think it's that important, particularly as we're just applying these models in Python. It's more just understanding the intuition behind it. In case I want to ask you, at least you have a basic understanding of how they actually fit. Again, we're not professors or researchers. We're more practitioners in the industry, and that's the main thing we really want to know. Right, now let's put all this theory into practice, because that's kind of important for us, because it's good to know all this, but if we don't do it, then it's a bit pointless. So the first thing we'll do is that we'll plot our data set. The data set we're going to work with is the US airline passenger volume. Use this throughout the whole course. It's just a very nice data set that I got from Kaggle. Again, it'll be linked in the description below, along with this notebook and also the Medium article. That's kind of like a transcript for this video. If you want to go through it on your own time and have a bit more read about it, if that's better for you to learn. And all this data set is that it's very kind of nice to work with, because it's got constant trends and obvious seasonality. So it's really, really good for us to model data with and just have a kind of fun with all these time series tools. As I've written here, we can see the time series has a clear trend and obvious seasonality, but it's increasing through time. And we need to make it stationary so we can meet the requirements of the moving average model. So the way we do this is by using the Box-Cox transform, as I've written here. So we import it from SciPy-Stats, call it on our data, and then we difference that data to stabilize the mean. Again, I've done this in a previous video, so I'm not going to go too much detail now. Check out that video if you want to know more, but this is just a general procedure that we apply when trying to make our data stationary. So calling this, as you can see, the data now pretty stationary. The mean is pretty much 0, and that the oscillations are at a constant rate, not increasing or decreasing through time too much. Now we can build a model. The first step we can do it is by plotting an ACF to determine the order we're going to use. The way we do this is by calling this plot ACF function. Again, I've done this all in another video. Oh, there you go, plot no, that's fine. Calling this. So again, this is kind of what it looks like. It's just a correlation of the lags at multiple lags at the current time series. You see here, there's a big spike at 12. This is probably due to the obvious seasonality we see here, right? So it's indexed by month, and there's a clearly yearly seasonality. So every 12 data points, there should be quite a strong correlation, and there is, as we can see here. This blue region signifies where the data is statistically significant. So anything that's like kind of in this blue zone, we don't really want. We kind of want the ones outside of blue zone because they're more likely to give us a signal to what the time series ought to be at that point in time. Again, the way you can normally do this is like not recommended to go this way because, well, it's better off just to brute force it, because here, like, what do I choose? I choose lag 3, well, not really, but I've got to choose lag 12. To what point? Because lag 20 is significant, so do I choose all to lag 20? It's all a bit of a nightmare to choose the optimal number this way. So a better way of doing it is by simply just calling this ARIMA function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit an ARIMA model to order 13. Again, I could choose 20, but in this case, I'm going to chop it off here to see how that looks like. This is the problem with kind of fitting it by eye, because it's always better to almost fit by brute force approach, in that you kind of want to try every single lag, but again, you can't, sometimes for computational constraints. So in this case, I'm just going to go up to lag 13. I'm doing this through this according to ARIMA model. Again, we'll discuss what ARIMA is in the next video. And then I'm going to do a simple train test split, and then I'm going to fit my, so this basically, don't worry too much what this order means here, but this first order is the autoregressive order. This is the differencing, but we've already differenced this, so I can say a 0. And this final one is the model average order, or moving average model error. Apologies, or order, sorry. A lot of hard words to say in this video. And we simply fit that, and that'll be our resulting model. So again, don't worry too much about this nonsense. It's just failed to converge. Again, this is just an example of where the model may not be perfect. And what we do is that we're going to simply do our forecast on a test set, and then we're going to do the inverse Box-Cox transform, and also do this difference, and then also do the inverse differencing. Again, don't worry too much about this. This is basically me just saying, you know, we've got the difference and Box-Cox transform data. Let's do the reverse, so we get our value back into the original units that we had for the time series. We don't want it in the units that this data is shown here, right? We want it in this units. So we go to the inverse of Box-Cox and the inverse of differencing to get back to these values, if that makes sense. Again, you can go through this in your own time. In a notebook if you're not too certain, but I think it's pretty intuitive what's going on here. And then what we're going to do is that we're simply going to get the forecast, and we're going to plot them with a train and test set. I'm calling this, I made a mistake there, apologies. There we go. And as you can see here, I mean, it's not great, is it? You see, it's kind of captured the trend quite well, but the seasonality is definitely off. And so just an example, like the moving average model may not be the best one as an example of it, but it's necessarily done very well here. The autoregressive component we saw in the previous video actually did a lot better at capturing the trend and the seasonality compared to the moving average model we see here. Let's quickly recap of the key points we discussed in this video. Moving average models is where we forecast the future using some linear combination of the previous forecast errors as opposed to the actual lags. This is quite a weird and niche way of building forecasting models, and as we saw in the Python tutorial, it didn't give that good results. However, the real power of moving average models comes in when we combine them with autoregressive components to build an ARIMA model, and this is something we'll show in the next video. If you enjoyed this video and also want to learn more about time series and forecasting, then make sure you check out the other videos in this playlist. Also to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.